Hi, and welcome to the SaVeg podcast. I'm Rose, and I'm a content creator going by the handle Cheap Lazy Vegan, and I also own a vegan cafe by the same name as the podcast, which is SaVeg Cafe.
And I'm Daniel, also a vegan, and one of your favorite guest stars on Cheap Lazy Vegan's YouTube channel.
We're two friends currently living in different countries, and we'll be giving our savage take on all things life, veganism, and the latest trending topics.
So basically, whatever comes to our minds, because we love to talk.
You are currently listening to the previous episode of this podcast, but if you would like to listen to this week's episode and get some exclusive content, go over to patreon.com/thesavagepodcast. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the SaVeg podcast.
Hey guys, we are back.
So we are back, and we are just, we're just smashing them out, aren't we, Daniel?
We really are, and I need to comment on how beautiful you look today, Rose. My goodness.
Yes, I actually put in an effort this morning. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you're welcome. I actually put in an effort. I'm so you don't have to look at a piece of garbage for an hour.
Well, it's not that. I mean, you look good either way, but I'm just kind of used to Rose like showing up like she just rolled out of bed, kind of hair to the side, kind of like half
That's
awake.
Usually how I prefer to show up. But this morning, I decided that, during this quarantine, maybe one thing I could do is actually make an effort.
Yeah.
So, one step at a time, you know what I'm saying?
Meanwhile,
slowly becoming a potato.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm turning into an Amazonic bushman because I can't get my hair cut, and I needed my hair cut for like a month. So it's just getting longer and longer, and it's to the point where I can't do anything with it at the moment. So it's like,
oh my God. Well, it doesn't look that long. Like, it doesn't look crazy yet.
The sides are super long at the back. Oh God. It's just like,
I know men get very weird about their haircuts. Like, I always look at a guy's hair and it's like, it looks fine to me, but they're like, oh my God, it's like so long. I'm like, it's really not that long. Yeah. Like, men just have this weird thing about their hair.
Could be. Yeah.
Like,
I think so.
Like to me, it looks fine. Like, it looks a little messy, but like, it looks fine. It doesn't look like that long, but I guess I won't understand like male hair.
Yeah. True.
It's like when a girl, like, I don't know, they put on a little makeup and they feel like a million times better, but then like the guy's probably like, oh, you look the same.
Exactly. It would be exactly the same. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Anyways, how are you guys doing? Hope you're doing well. Leave us a little comment. What are we discussing today, Daniel?
So today, if I have this correct, because we're actually doing two podcasts today, and the one this afternoon I'm very excited for.
And you guys, just putting this out there, we've decided that certain podcasts, we're not going to give any life updates because we're messing this thing up a little bit because we're kind of like releasing some of them in different orders, and then it just gets confusing. So today we're not going to give a life update because we don't know when we're going to actually release this, do we?
No, we don't. So no life update. By the time by the time we release this, the quarantine could be over, so maybe that won't even be relevant either.
Oh my God, can you imagine? No, we are going to be recording a lot more before the quarantine is over.
This is true. So today, what we're going to be talking about is something I think that we all kind of face throughout life, but especially when you kind of hit that age, that ripe old age of 30 plus. So you're just breaking into your 30s.
Or late 20s. I think it starts in the late 20s.
Yeah, late 20s, early 30s. And we're just kind of talking about more kind of the pressures of basically getting older, and what are some of the pressures as you enter your 30s, and what's kind of societal expectations, I guess.
But even before 30, I actually think maybe pressures of like just, 20s, like maybe even early 20s. It starts from a, kind of a younger adulthood.
Yeah.
Pressures of adulthood.
The pressures of life when you're
The pressures of adulting. There you go. That'll be the title of our episode.
Ooh, okay, that's good. I like that. The pressures of adulting. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So are we going to do you have notes, Daniel? Did you do some research? Because normally Daniel's a very good student and does a lot of research, and then I just show up, rolled out of bed.
Yeah. Today I actually didn't do that much research. I pulled up some articles really quick, but I actually haven't gone through them. So there's one I did read, which was really cute, but it's not so much the pressures of turning 30. It's like 9 things I would tell somebody who's about to turn 30, which I thought was really cute.
That's cute.
Yeah. The other one. Okay. Let's see this one. This is called The Pressures of Turning 30. Can we talk about a crisis? Oh, God damn.
Oh, did you look at it already? Or are we going to be surprised?
I haven't read any of this.
Okay.
Oh God.
Well, I mean, I think we can kind of guess as to some of the pressures, can't we?
Maybe why don't we just talk about some of the pressures that we've felt?
Yes, and then we can kind of like go through these later for fun.
Exactly. So what would you say?
Pressures of adulthood, pressures of adulting. Well, I think there's so many. I think, in society, we're kind of expected to behave a certain way or have a certain life. Yeah. And I think we're always kind of told like, okay, when you go through the trajectory that is your life, you go to school, then you go to university, then you get a job, then you get married, buy a house, have kids, and then you retire, all that stuff. Those are kind of like the plan. That's like the plan.
Yeah. And I think that's like the traditional kind of like what has happened for our parents and maybe our grandparents kind of like life cycles.
Yes.
That's kind of how they've grown, and that's why they kind of put that on us as well.
Yes. But then also I think that because that's what we're seeing and that's what we see as kind of like the pinnacle of success. Yeah. So then we put that pressure on ourselves as well. Yeah. So because we feel like a failure if we don't achieve those things. So it's not just like, oh, the outside people are telling us exactly like, okay, this is what you need to do. But then because these are so heavily ingrained, we just kind of end up thinking that that's just how we are supposed to live to be happy. So
exactly.
Yes. So one of the things would be obviously getting married, having children. Let's talk about marriage.
Oh, God. We're starting off the deep end, Rose.
Oh, God. This be a sensitive topic for Daniels.
It is a sensitive topic.
For both of us?
For both of us, yeah.
No, for both of us.
Well, marriage is an interesting one because like reflecting back on my life, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but I look back and I remember when I was like really young and I was like maybe 14, 15, and I envisioned how my life was going to be. And I thought by now at 31, I would be with married, maybe with a kid. And it's interesting, like that particular part of my life hasn't like, I guess, not manifested yet, I guess. And, I guess.
But what about marriage is something that you think that you need in your life? Like do you feel less of a success because you're not married at 30?
Well, interestingly, I don't know. It's hard to say because right now I feel very comfortable with it. I think when I was younger, if I thought that I'd be 30, or 31, like I am now, I would have thought that it would be a failure. However, being 31 now and not being married or with a significant partner, I don't feel like that's the case, only because I feel like, again, I've had a very, good life and I've, done a lot of things. And I think you're right in a sense that like it's ingrained in us from a very young age. If you look at like all the Hollywood movies, all of the like Disney movies, it's all about like finding romance and finding the one to spend the rest of your life with. And don't get me wrong, it's still in the back of my mind, but I don't think as I'm getting older, I'm looking at that as less of a pinnacle of success, and more as a nice to have. Like it would be nice to have a life partner. It would be nice to have somebody that, is with me, my, my ride or die.
Your ride or die.
My ride or die person, or my person to like, do lots of traveling with and enjoy life with. But I think as I'm getting older, it's interesting, like my mindset has shifted. And I think that's a mindset that's shifted more recently for me, whereas I still want that. Don't get me, I do want to get married at some point, but I don't see it as a necessary for me to succeed in life, I guess.
Yeah. So another question. So why marriage? What about, let's say you met someone that you loved, right? Yeah. And he was like, I don't believe in marriage. What would you have a negative reaction to that, or would you be still okay with that? What do you think?
That's an interesting one. As I'm getting older, again, when I was in my 20s, I probably would be like, no, we have to get married, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is an important thing. But like I said, it's not something that I see as like, is going to make me more successful in life, or it's something that I need to achieve. Yeah. So I think if I find somebody that's like my life partner, I think I'll be pretty content. If they don't want to get married, but they're, committed to me, then I don't see necessarily why I have to have a wedding and have to get married. Yeah. Again,
interesting.
It would be nice to have, but as I'm getting older, I'm seeing it as less of an important thing, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. What about you, Rose? Let's flip the question around.
Well, going back to you for a second, I think it's interesting because Daniel is, you're obviously a gay man, but like I feel like, I think so, Daniel. I don't know if you got the memo. But it's interesting because like you still have such like kind of traditional views in a sense.
Yeah.
Like you're like a girl. You're a 16-year-old girl.
We already established in another podcast episode that my spirit animal is a 16-year-old girl. So
yes.
Going
so
on
you
that,
want the wedding? You want to wear the white dress?
Oh gosh, no, but
yeah.
I do find it really interesting that as I'm getting older, this is something that's becoming less and less of a. You'd think that as I'm getting older, I'd feel more pressure that I need to get married now.
Yeah.
But as I'm getting older, I still want to have a partner. Don't get me wrong, but I'm becoming more and more, less and less seeing the importance of having a grand wedding and doing all that stuff and having the traditional marriage. So it's interesting as you grow, like obviously your ideologies like shift a bit. So,
yeah. I think it's because when you see, when you're like younger, you kind of fantasize about this kind of stuff. And again, you think that those things are going to make you happy and those things are going to, give you all sorts of success and all of these things. And then as you get older, you see your friends getting married, you see your friends getting divorced, you see, relationships crumbling, you see the realities of what it's actually about. And I'm not saying all marriage is going to fail or anything like that, of course, but you see the reality of it. And you see that they're not really necessarily happier than a single person and vice versa. So it's like, you see the realities, and that's at least for me, like, taking it back to me, I guess. I still, like a part of me still, maybe it's because I was, of that deeply ingrained societal expectation that I should get married and have a wedding and have a family in that traditional way. I still I guess I still want to get married, but at the same time, I dial it back and I'm like, oh my God, like, do I actually though? Because, once you get married, it becomes again, more complicated. And like a part of me is like, why do I need this like certificate to, prove to the world that I'm like with this other person? If we love each other, wouldn't we be able to just have a relationship and not be married?
I think that's a really interesting one. And I think that's a really good point. It's probably why I'm in this similar kind of category, in a sense that I have also seen the realities. I think when you're younger, especially when you're like growing up and stuff, you do have this kind of like fantasy notion of what a wedding is. And, you see it in the movies, really like extra and fabricated and all of this stuff. And, people become so happy and it's like the best thing that's happened in their life and blah, 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 blah. And like, don't get me wrong. I don't want to discredit the people that are listening to this podcast and are happily married. Don't think that I'm like, trying to tarnish that.
Oh, we're still like kind of pro-marriage, as you can hear.
100%, yeah. But at the same time, we also see the reality of the situation that, a lot of unhappy people get married. And we do see some of our friends, even now we're only in our early 30s and I have some friends that are divorced. So it does happen.
Damn. It'd be real as hell.
Exactly. So it's
on
like,
a happy note, both their parents are still married.
Yeah. Yeah. Which actually, interestingly enough, I don't know if it's the same for your friends, but I know among like my friendship groups or the people that I know, a lot of people, their parents aren't still together. So I was
there are, I'm trying to think actually. Actually, I have a lot of Asian friends and a lot of them, their parents are still together. I think maybe now divorce is more common in Asia, but I think like divorce wasn't as common in our parents' generation in Asia compared to in the Western world. Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's a lot more divorced couples in like Canada or USA. But I'm pretty sure that's going to change, in our lifetime once we get older. But I do know a lot of people that have, divorced parents.
Exactly.
And that must suck.
I know.
Jesus Christ.
I mean,
see, that's the thing. Imagine if you had kids and then you had to get divorced.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's so tough, right? And, obviously that's never an easy decision for somebody to make. But, sometimes obviously it's the best one for them. If they're really unhappy in that relationship and, it's toxic, then it's for the best for everyone. But obviously it can be really hard. And that's again why I think, I'm on the fence about this one about marriage. It's like,
right? It's so difficult.
Yeah. I do feel that pressure. I think I feel more of a pressure, especially from like family and stuff, to be in a relationship. I think like a long-term relationship. Like, I don't know about you, but like anytime I go to like any kind of like family gatherings or whatever else, everyone's always like, oh, Daniel, like, where's your partner? You never bring anyone around, and I'm just like, you guys, like,
oh God, it happens to everyone, doesn't it? Well, luckily for me, my family is all the way in South Korea. My extended family, I mean. So the only family I have here in Canada is my, direct family.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what was I gonna say? I forgot. Oh, but so like if I were to go to Korea though, like for sure it would be like, are you not married? Like when are you getting married?
I was gonna say when we go there, if we take a trip to South Korea,
you'll have to pretend to be my boyfriend.
I think your family will see through that.
I don't think they'll see through anything like that.
Really,
Daniel, I told you like when you like to me. What do I say about rainbows falling out of your mouth?
You say that every time I speak, rainbows fall out of my mouth, Rose. Okay, thanks for reiterating this on the podcast.
I just love it when you say it yourself. It's my favorite. Anyways, so when Daniel speaks to me, like I can tell that you're gay, obviously. And like anyone that's usually people that are native English speakers can tell. Yeah. But then if you if you're not a native English speaker and like let's say you're Korean, I don't think you'd be able to tell. It'd be hard.
Okay. Yeah.
It'd be the same with like I don't know. Because you're not like super like, you know, super flamboyant.
Sometimes.
You're just like
after a few drinks, I am.
After a few drinks, the 16-year-old girl comes out.
My spirit animal goes on show and gets dancing.
Oh,
you know?
God damn. But anyways, yeah, if I were to go to South Korea, then like, yeah, they would, there would be pressure. But also now things are shifting because a lot of people in Korea also are not getting married because a lot of problems. So things have changed so much since our parents were, you know, in our age.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think the whole idea of the institute of marriage, as people like to call it.
Yeah.
It is something that's derived from like a long history, and it is kind of, you know, I think people are finding it's, I don't know, not necessarily outdated because it is very symbolic as to your commitment to somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the terms and ideas of a marriage, or not the terms, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like the whole notion of a marriage is like really, really dramatically shifting.
Yeah.
I think again, you know, you see in the last kind of 10 years, gay marriages and, you know, that's coming out now. So I think there's a lot of, you know, and also the whole idea of like, you know, that show, well, there was that show about Modern Family, the dynamic of what makes a family is changing.
Right.
So you have so many different family. It's not like the typical family unit that we necessarily grew up with, a mom, a dad, this kind of stuff. It can be like lots of different elements. Yeah. So I think all in all, it's shifting. But I do think like, there is still obviously that pressure from our parents to like, you know, be not necessarily married, but in a relationship for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, do you feel it from your
and
parents?
We also, a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, recently my, oh my God, I have a little story. So my parents, were in Vancouver recently and they parked their car. So my brother, he was in school in Vancouver, but now he's doing online classes because of the whole situation. And basically, they went to go pick him up, essentially. So they drove to Vancouver, parked their car outside of his like residence, which I guess is in downtown Vancouver, and like apparently nearby. I think it's nearby East Hastings Street. Do you know about East Hastings? Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be like a big street of like, it's supposed to be a very rough street.
Oh, is it where all the druggies are and stuff?
Yes, lots of drug addicts there. So it was like near there apparently, or something like that. They basically told me that it was just like filled with drug addicts. Yeah. And then they parked their car on the street and they were kind of like, you know, iffy about it. Turns out the next day the car was smashed. 2 windows were smashed, the side windows. So they stole like, I mean, they didn't steal any, like I think people were just kind of like in a drug, you know, induced state and then just kind of smashed and then stole like a jacket or something. And then, and then the next day they parked somewhere else, obviously. They fixed the windows and then they parked in a place underneath like a building. And it was like not a private parking lot. It was still public, but it was like, you know, kind of indoor parking, but not, you know, like when it's like under a building. Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of. So they parked there and then guess what?
The windows got smashed again. Yes. Are you serious? Oh my God, that's so unfortunate.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. I was like, how unlucky can you be?
That's super unlucky. Because I've driven to Vancouver many times, and well, not many times. I think twice or 3 times I've been to Vancouver and driven, and I parked my car in like pretty dodgy areas, like by hostels and random stuff downtown, and I never had my windows smashed.
You must have had a shitty looking car then. Just kidding.
Thanks, Rose.
No, just kidding. No, apparently it happens a lot to cars that are out of town because they know that they're out of town, and I think now it's getting rougher.
Yeah.
So like maybe back when you went, it wasn't as rough. I'm not sure. That's my guess. And then, so anyways, the back window got smashed the second time around, and then. So anyways, and then they didn't have time to fix it in Vancouver. So they just put like because they were supposed to come back that day. So they just put like a garbage bag over the window and drove back. Anyways, so I went with my dad to come because he got the window fixed here, and then I went with him to get it picked up, the car. And then my dad was like paying at the counter and all that stuff. And then like there was like a guy that was like helping him and like doing the transaction, and he was like kind of good looking, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't really think much of it. We left the store. My dad's like, that man, he was a handsome man. He's like, it's like, now whenever I see a handsome man, I think of you, Rose. Or something like that.
Honestly, I love your dad. He comes up with the funniest things, Rose.
Seriously,
honestly.
I don't even, God, I can't even. Yeah. Anyway, so that happened.
So
but I mean, I think that my parents are a little less like, pressury. They're not like, I'm sure it's on their mind. They don't want me to like be alone, I'm sure. But they know I do well alone. So,
exactly. But it's interesting because I know like you'd mentioned like some people, sometimes like Korean parents, when they move to Canada, they can still be like, well, not still be, but they have certain like ideologies. Like, for example, they want you to date a Korean guy and it's like super important. And it's kind of nice that your parents are more, I guess, liberal in that sense.
Yeah, they're very liberal. They actually, they're like, oh, don't date a Korean guy. Well, not like a traditional Korean guy, you know. They don't mind a Korean, obviously. They're not like, but they think that a lot of Korean people have like still very kind of old-fashioned mindset.
Yeah.
So it's funny because, my parents are like not typical Korean parents. A lot of typical Korean parents will be like, date a Korean man or like marry a Korean man. And they're definitely not like that at all. So thank God.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, there's definitely like, yeah. Interesting.
Anyways, okay, so marriage. So that's, and another thing about, another point I want to make about the whole marriage thing. I do feel like it reminds me of like, have you watched Sex and the City?
Yes, but I haven't seen it for years. So I don't really remember.
Oh my gosh.
A lot.
So I just remember that there was an episode where they talk about how, when people get married, like people that are in a relationship or married are always like celebrated in a sense. Like there's always like celebrations for, people that are married. For example, you get married and people bring you all these presents and, you have a fancy like ceremony for yourself and all this stuff. But then when you're single, you don't get any of these things. So like these are little subtle ways of telling people that you need to be in a relationship, essentially, to be happy and successful and to be celebrated.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because if you think about it, even like our friends and like we grew up with a lot of this kind of like in the media and everything else. So we have it in the back of our minds, but like even in our friends and stuff, a lot of like, people will be like, oh, so like, the second you meet new people and stuff, oh, who are you seeing? Are you dating anyone?
Yeah.
Like, and then if they're not like, oh, that's okay. It's never like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like that's cool. You're single.
Yeah,
like,
that's
how are you
cool.
doing
You're doing a great job being single. You're not in some shitty relationship.
Exactly. Whereas if you're like, oh yeah, no, I don't, or if you're like, I do have a partner, like, oh, congratulations. That's awesome that you have a boyfriend, or you're married.
It's like celebrated.
Congrats to you, great job. Yeah. And let me show you the rock, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just like, I mean, and again, I don't want like people to think that I'm being like bitter or anything or like negative.
No, but it's true.
Yeah, but I think that there's just, and I'm for those people that are happily married and in marriages and everything, I think that's amazing, and I do eventually, one day hopefully we'll be in that situation. Who knows? But I just think you're right. There's like this stigma in society where it's like if you're being single, if you are single, it is automatically looked at in like more of a negative light for whatever reason, and I think that is wrong. It's like, who cares if you're single or in a relationship or married? It should be, are you happy?
Exactly.
That should be the fundamental thing is like, are you happy?
Exactly. So, have you seen the movie The Lobster?
I haven't, no.
Daniel, I feel like every single time I'm like, have you seen this, Daniel? And then you're like, no. I'm like, Daniel. Did I not recommend it to you, Daniel?
I don't think you've ever recommended.
Okay, you're gonna have to write that down and watch. I think it's still on Netflix. I could be wrong. I really hope it is on Netflix.
The other one you recommended wasn't Rose, so because I looked for it.
God damn! Well, Get Out is on my Netflix. I don't know what's wrong with your Spanish goddamn Netflix. Okay,
there'll be different shows over here. Okay,
maybe it's called something else in Spanish, or is it? Anyway, I'll tell you the premise of The Lobster. Okay. So it's like a dystopian future, right? Kind of like what we're living right now. Just kidding. So basically, it's about this dystopia future where being single is illegal. So you're not allowed to be single. So It's so interesting. So then what happens is, I haven't watched it for a while, but basically it's so weird. It's kind of like sci-fi. Like, anyway, so you're not allowed to be single. So let's say you were in a relationship and then you like, so this guy, Colin Farrell's in it. So Colin Farrell gets divorced. And then as soon as he gets divorced, he's like, you know, technically not supposed to be single, right? So then single people get sent to like a hotel, and they all get sent to this like kind of conference where they have like 45 days or something like that to find themselves a mate. So there's like men and women that are single, and then they're supposed to find themselves a mate within that allocated time. Yeah. And if they don't find themselves a mate in that time, then they get turned into an animal of their choice.
Oh my God.
Isn't that so interesting?
That and it's so cool.
Yeah, you must watch it. It's like so weird. And then there's like people that are that like choose to be single, but they're like outlaws of society, so they're like living in the forest.
Ooh.
It's so interesting.
Yeah,
I think so I think it's like a parody, kind of a parody of like what actually happens in society. Yeah. What we just talked about, how like kind of single people are looked on as like inferior or whatever. Exactly. And then like if you're in a relationship, you're looked on as like, better. You've reached the level of success, even though you could be like in a toxic relationship. Exactly. You know what I mean?
But this is the thing. It's like, it's interesting that is what we as society have labeled as success, because, you know, there's a lot of people, like you said, that are in relationships that aren't happy and, you know, would be better off and happier single, but they just feel like because of that expectation, they feel like they necessarily need to stay with that person. So I don't know, it's an interesting one. Like, yeah. That's how that movie sounds so cool, though.
You need to watch it. Anyways, I recommend it to everyone. Some people might think it's really weird, but I really enjoyed it.
No, it sounds. I like the idea of it. Like the premise sounds amazing. Yeah, and you're right. It is a parody and kind of an interesting look at how it is kind of like today. You know. Yeah. Because I mean, how many?
Obviously, a very exaggerated version.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Like, I mean, how many times have you been out or like met people and they'll be like, oh, well, maybe it doesn't happen. I don't know if it happens to you, but I'll meet people and they're like, oh, so like you're single. I'll be like, oh yeah, I have a great friend for you. Blah blah blah. You should meet him. And
it happens to you a lot because you're gay.
Yeah, true. Oh my God, this is another thing that I need to just digress for just a second. Vent. Okay. For all of you listening, you know, our lovely listeners across the globe, one thing that I am going to be very adamant about is, if you do have a gay friend or lesbian or LGBT or whatever, just because somebody is of a certain sexual orientation does not mean that they will match with every other person that's of that sexual orientation. Because I've had so many friends be like, oh my God, I have the perfect guy for you. And I've actually gone on some dates, like blind dates.
Oh no.
Oh,
and they were so bad?
They were bad. I refuse to go now because I'm like, clearly this person doesn't like understand my personality and the kind of people that I would like to date.
Right.
And the few that I did go on, I was just like, oh my God, how could you
even think?
Exactly.
Right.
Like this is totally like not anyone that, not that there's anything wrong with these people, but we're just you know, such a clash of personalities. And I was just like, what is this person thinking? So
yeah, it definitely doesn't happen to me. It doesn't happen to me really. Yeah. I mean, of course, sometimes if someone's like, oh yeah, this guy's, I feel like maybe now it happens to me. No, it doesn't really happen to me that often, but I think it happens to you more because you're gay. And like, I feel like that happens to a lot of gay people, unfortunately.
Like, oh my God, I know another great gay guy. You guys would be perfect for each other. Oh, really? What does he like to do? Oh, I don't know, but he's gay. You know, what are some of the activities what does he do for fun? What's he like? Oh, I don't know, but he's gay. It's like,
he'll definitely like you, and you'll definitely like him because you're both gay, right? So
exactly. It's the same for like, this is the thing though, like for straight people, individuals, like it's not like they would just set you up with a guy just because you guys are both straight. Like I wouldn't be like, oh Rose, I know this great straight guy, you guys would be a perfect match. It's like, well,
although I'm sure now, like after maybe a certain age, maybe like let's say like we're all 40, right? We hit 40 and like there's like, let's say I'm single.
Oh God.
And 40. Like all my friends and
kidding.
all Daniel's kidding, guys. And all our friends were married, and then they would probably be like, oh yeah, I know a guy that's single. You know what I mean? It would probably happen in that similar sense. Because like being single at that age would be less common. And that would be really annoying too. I'd be like, I'm not interested just because he's single.
Interestingly though, Rose, I don't know if this is going to be the case for us, like when we turn 40, but I think for our parents' generation, it was like seriously not the norm at all to be single. Like most people were married or in relationships.
100%,
like But I wonder if for our generation, by the time we get to 40, it's going to be different. Like I'm sure
100%. Yeah. It's going to be different.
Yeah. There'll still be a lot of people in relationships and married, but I do think there'll be a lot more single people. And it'll become more
round
normal.
2, Daniel.
Oh God. Round 2. Woo!
Oh God damn. Yeah, it's true. I think like we can discuss more about this in another episode because I want to talk about, we can discuss more in another episode because I want to really delve into the modern dating sphere and modern relationship sphere, which we will be discussing in another episode.
Yeah.
But I do think that the dynamics are changing and the way, again, we're becoming more picky and there's going to be more divorces, I think, compared to our parents' generation. 100%.
Yeah. Well, I think there already is. Compared to our parents or even our grandparents' generation, the level of divorce has like gone up so much.
Of course. So because like imagine like our grandparents' generation, divorce probably wasn't even an option really. So
it wasn't, especially I think for a lot of, and I'm not saying it's like the women that make these decisions. It's obviously it can be the man or the women, but I think back then women had a lot less kind of rights and stuff, and they were looked at very negatively if they were a divorced.
Yes, but things are shifting and things have shifted. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. Oh wow, we just talked about marriage for like 15 hours. Oh God. What's next? What's another pressure, Daniel?
So another pressure. So this one we kind of touched on in another podcast, but I think it's very topical and it's not necessarily a pressure of turning 30 or whatever, but it's a pressure of when you finish school, like high school or whatever, the pressure is you go to university and then you get a job. Like you get into your career right away and you get a career job. Yeah. So I think that's...
And like you have to be like successful, like a certain level in your career by whatever age.
Exactly.
And if not, then like you're looked on as less, successful or whatever.
And we're expected to throughout life. I mean, I know it's important to grow as a person and everything else, but also we're expected in our career. So, okay, you finish your undergrad, you get into your career, and it's like, if you stay at a certain level in your career, that's also looked at unfavorably than if you actually climb the corporate ladder. Yeah. But then if you think about it, and we kind of talked about this again in another podcast, but there's two things that are wrong with this, I think. Well, there's a couple. But number one, nowadays, so many more people are going to university. So not all of them are necessarily going to be able to get corporate or jobs that they studied for when they finish, because are there enough, and you mentioned this last time, are there enough jobs to sustain the amount of people that are graduating? Are there enough jobs out there for for us to have full employment? And the second issue is the way that we're like, okay, you get your job, your corporate job, and we expect you to constantly be climbing that corporate ladder, getting more senior, getting more money, whatever else. But it's like, if you think about it, there's only so many CEO, senior exec positions available, and how many people are trying to claw their way up there. Not everyone's going to get there. So there's kind of like that problem if there's not enough kind of positions available once you are in the corporate world to continually keep, going.
And like, why do we need to continually, keep going? Like
exactly.
When is enough, like how much money is enough? How much like status is enough? Yeah. We don't all need to be the CEO.
Exactly.
And like, just because you're CEO doesn't make you a good person, doesn't make you, more happy. Let's be real. A lot of them might be fucking miserable and horrible people. Who the fuck knows? A lot of them are horrible people. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Not all of them. Yeah. I think it's an interesting one too, because it's like, you're right. Like, I guess this is also another topic that we have to get into at some point.
Okay.
About capitalism and money and growth.
Oh my God. I just watched an episode, Daniel, of Dirty Money. Have you seen that?
No, I saw it come up on my Netflix. So I really want to
you should watch it.
Yeah.
It's kind of about that. Okay. So like before we discuss, we can watch all of that. Okay. Because the first episode is about like the banks and how they like kind of fuck over people and not all banks again, but like I do feel like a lot of banks, like they're designed to, make money off of money.
Exactly. Well, the whole thing about the banks and especially in like investment firms as well. Yeah. As such, like look at what happened in the financial crisis with a lot of the investment firms in the US. A lot of them, some of them went under and stuff, but I think a lot of the senior execs, there wasn't that level of accountability for actions that there should have been. Whereas if it was more of a kind of quote blue collar crime, they would have been punished to the full extent of the law. Whereas these people, certain individuals, and I'm not saying the industry, because I think there's some really good people that work in the industry as well. I met a lot because I've worked in finance, so I know. But I think what happened in the States and in other parts of the world, a lot of these corporate execs were walking away with millions while people were losing their pensions. Mom and pop who worked, maybe at the local warehouse or something, not making that much, but, they've saved for their retirement, going to retire and lost everything. And then those senior execs weren't prosecuted properly, They still
not at all.
They still have their offshore accounts in the Bahamas and whatever else. So
It's crazy.
It is crazy. But that's for another.
Oh, goddamn.
I'm getting like into
I love
it.
how we either do like really serious kind of societal, like, social issue topics, or we'll just get drunk and talk about Netflix.
I know. I mean, that's just
I
kind
hope
of
you're
like our
enjoying
life.
this.
Yeah. I do. My favorite ones that I love talking about, though, I can't wait to do the modern dating one because I just love talking about dating. I find it really interesting, and the whole like dynamic of it shifting, the whole masculinity, sexuality spectrum, the whole sexuality spectrum is like, we should just do an episode on that because I find it so interesting.
And so for our modern dating and modern relationship episode, we're actually going to read a book called Modern Love by Aziz Ansari, which I always reference. And I've listened to it. I listened to the audiobook version and I listened to it like 2 times already, I think 2 times. And I've just re-downloaded it on my phone, and I told Daniel to go download it. Yeah. And it's read by Aziz Ansari, who's like the comedian. And it's really interesting. It's like basically kind of like, I guess it's like research on, the changes in dating and relationships compared to previous generations and the modern world. And it's so interesting. So anyways, if you want to listen to it, we have a free audiobook for you guys. So it's audibletrial.com/the SaVeg podcast. And if you go there, you can download a free audiobook. So listen to it so that in the next whatever episode, when
that episode comes out,
which will be soon, we can discuss it together.
Exactly.
So that'll be fun.
That's my homework as well. So Rose has given me a little bit of homework for this podcast. So she said,
but it's a really interesting listen.
I mean, just from what you said right now, like I'm actually really, really excited for it. Yes. So I'm definitely going to be doing that this weekend. So that will be fun. So definitely check that out. And get your hands on the free audiobook.
Yes. audibletrial.com/the SaVeg podcast.
Perfect.
Audible is spelled AUDIBLE. I think AUD Audible. Sometimes, like, when you spell something out loud, I can't like picture the letter. Like, I can't say the letter. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I can spell it. I can like write it down.
Or sometimes when you're spelling something, it's right, but it just looks really weird.
Oh my God, like, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I'll be like, this doesn't look right. Like, this is not how you spell, like toast. Toast always does that to me. I don't know what it is about the word toast, but I'll like be looking at it. I'll be like, hang on, is that right? No. Oh, yeah. It is. I don't know. It's one of those weird things. So
anyway, so modern dating, we'll definitely do an episode on that. I think we could do multiple episodes on that.
Yeah, we need to.
Anyway, and then what were we discussing? What's another?
So we're talking about getting into the corporate world.
Right. So like. Yeah, your career, pressure. Essentially. Yeah. Well, and then...
I was going to say, that's another interesting one about, again, we're looking at the pressures of society, measures of success, this kind of stuff. And again, what type of career or what type of job you have is also a lot of pressure as to what's deemed as successful in society. So, for example, if you're a lawyer or a doctor, like fair enough, you would have to go to school for a long time, and they are very respected careers. However, and these individuals are looked at as more successful than, let's say, somebody that is a bartender. People will somebody like in the trades, somebody a carpenter or a mechanic, which are very important jobs. But then we don't look at those jobs for some reason. We don't look at those jobs as successful. Exactly. You know what I mean? We would look at a lawyer as someone being more successful, and we'd say, "Oh, that's amazing," blah blah blah. Yeah. And when your kids are growing up, you're like, "Oh, you should try to be a lochter." A lochter?
A lochter? What's a lochter, Daniel?
A lawyer.
Would you like to be
doctor.
A lochter? Yeah. That's so funny. A lawyer / doctor.
Oh God,
a lochter.
A lochter. That just came out very weird. But you do.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. You do want your kids. You're like, you say to your kids, "Look, you should go to school to try to be a lawyer, a doctor, this kind of stuff." And like a lot of other things, you never like, oh, you should become a bartender. But like, you know what? If somebody works as a bartender and they really enjoy it and they love doing that job and they're very passionate about it, what's wrong with that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like if they're
there's nothing wrong
happy
with
and
that.
stuff, we shouldn't as a society look down on that person and say, oh, why aren't you doing something else with your life?
And how important is that job, Daniel? Especially for us.
It is you are doing society a very important service. Okay. Me and Rose will be frequent customers.
No, but in all seriousness, I thought about this and like imagine if like so many jobs that are deemed as like successful and like super important and high ranking. I think about it and I'm like, how important are these jobs really? Because all of these like CEOs and the high ranking people, like don't get me wrong, like still respect. I have respect for these people that are working hard and doing all that. But at the same time, I'm like, you know, world crumbles down. Let's say, you know, we're kind of like down to our, you know, just our bodies and whatever. Like, what's more important? Yeah, like doctors would be important for sure, of course. Yeah. Would a lawyer be important in that situation? Not necessarily. What else would be important? Like somebody like a mechanic would be important, you know, to fix things. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like certain jobs, I'm like, these are like very important jobs. We just 100%. Don't think that they're really that important. So. Yeah. You know, and yeah, like somebody that can fix things around the house, like that's a very important job. Like I wouldn't know how to do like anything around this house. If something broke, I'd be like, oh, I don't know how to do this.
Exactly. No, and this is the thing. And I think, oh my God, I had a really good point now and I just totally forgot it.
Oh, goddamn, Daniel.
Goddamn.
Your brain be fried.
Oh God, my brain
We be talking about way too much shit.
I know. I think like, oh yeah, one thing I wanted to just comment just again for the listeners is like, again, we're not trying to like discredit any professions or anything else. We're just like looking at it from the angle of what our society as a whole has deemed as being successful in life, right? And it's just interesting that these like really important jobs are deemed less successful. Looked at it differently. And it's also interesting how as a society in certain countries as well, certain really key professions are also really vastly underpaid as well. So
underpaid.
Like the UK, for example, I'll just use this one as an example. Like teachers and nurses, who I think are super, super important, are paid shockingly in the UK. And the kind of work that they're doing, like especially both, but the nurses, you know, they're working crazy hours and they're getting like barely enough to get by.
Yeah. So. And can I make a point? I also think that a lot of these jobs that are underpaid are jobs that are held primarily by women. And I think that's like fucked up. So people always talk about the wage gap or whatever. And I think it's a complicated topic, the wage gap. Some people think that it's not real. Like some people think that it's like, if you put other factors into consideration, then it's not a real gap. So as in, if you and I had the same job, it's not necessarily that I would get paid less or something like that. Although I think that's also like disputed. But I do think that one way that we have a wage gap is that, jobs, for example, that women are more inclined to do, like nurses, caregivers, teachers, all extremely important jobs, but are deemed not that important and are kind of not paid well. So it's like, of course, it's not always the case. There are male jobs like janitors, for example, like not those aren't really male jobs, but it's probably more males that are janitors and that they don't get paid as much as well. But I do feel like a lot of jobs that women tend to have are paid less. And why? For what reason? How important are teachers? Exactly. Like so fucking important.
It's also when you look into companies, though, typically roles that are more often held by women, for example, HR and all that kind of stuff. They're also underpaid departments of companies as well, generally, when you compare to like the finance department or another department that's usually more better compensated, I guess. It's an interesting one. Like salaries and wages, it is so complex. The whole, you know, how much people get paid. And then there's that whole argument about, you know, should companies be more transparent about what they're paying employees? Right. And there's a whole argument for and against that, which I think we should get into again in another podcast. Oh, God, there's so many things coming up.
We be fixing society in this podcast.
We're just getting to the crux of it. But again, with all of these things that we're talking about, we're bringing it back to looking at us just growing up and getting older. And you have these constant pressures as to what is deemed as successful. And again, there's pressures to get certain jobs, to do certain things after you finish university, to get married, to, you know, and the other one I think we should talk about, which kind of leads up to this, is getting a house.
Yes. Okay. So buying a house. So that's one interesting thing that is also, again, deemed as success. And I've always been kind of not anti buying a house, but I've always tried to look at it like I've never been like, oh my God, I must like buy a house. That means I'll be successful. Because, and a lot of people think that it's always a good financial investment. And I don't actually agree that it's always a good investment. It just depends on the time, like your current situation. It like, yes, maybe in the long run, but at the same time, if you don't have much money right now, it's not going to be the best investment. And plus there's pros and cons to renting and buying.
Exactly.
So, So what do you think, Daniel? As someone that used to be obsessed with buying a house.
I was obsessed. I was obsessed. I don't know. Again, I think it's because time and time again, and this was part of the reason why there was that the financial crash in the US is because, again, all of these banks and everything was like mortgages. And, because the collateral is houses are a sound, secure investment that will never go down in value. They're constantly, they're a sound investment. Again, I think it does depend on, if you look at a house from strictly an investment purpose, okay, maybe in the long term, it might be a sound financial investment. However, there are chances that you could lose money. And you look at like what happened with the financial market crash. So I have friends that bought houses. I can't remember exactly what year, but maybe it was like right around, I don't know, 2008, 2009 or something.
Was it before the crash?
Before, it was like slightly before the crash.
So 2008 was the crash.
Okay.
So it would have been before 2008.
2007. I think 2007 or 2006.
Oh God, really?
They bought a house with their boyfriend. And
see, that's another complicated topic.
Exactly. That's another one. And they ended up breaking up and having to sell the place, and both of them lost money. So again, had they just been renting a place together, they could have both walked away a lot easier and not had that extra. I mean, they lost tens of thousands.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not surprised.
That just goes to show you. And like, even Calgary is a really, really good example of this. Like why, especially for short to medium term, maybe long term it's a bit better, but short to medium term, because you don't know what's going to happen in life, right? So a house might not always be a sound financial investment, because people, for example, bought condos in Calgary right during the boom, and the condo price has dropped a lot, and actually it's still kind of going down a bit lately in the Calgary real estate market. So if you're trying to get out now, you're probably going to be losing money. So that's not actually a sound investment. Versus had you just been renting and saving your money that whole time, you might be better off. But everyone's like, no, you'll build equity, you'll do this. Yeah. So I think there's still a big part of me that wants to get a house.
Oh, 100%. Me too.
Yeah. And
don't get me wrong.
Yeah, my reasoning is different. I used to think of it more as a financial investment. I think it still kind of is, but it's not always going to necessarily be positive, because you could lose money. But I look at it as, if I get a house, it's more, my mentality now has shifted again away from it as an investment to more, when I do eventually get to that age, when I stop working and I've retired, I don't want to have to be responsible to pay a rent or a mortgage, because that's your biggest expense, right? So if you own your house, regardless if the house price goes up or down, but let's just say you own the house, you're not planning on selling it, and you just live there, you don't have to pay a mortgage or rent or anything. So that's like huge help for when you retire. So I'm looking at it more from that angle, and not so much like, oh, I'm going to make thousands of dollars off this house.
Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of people, I know a few friends that have purchased like a condo, especially a condo, for example. And, because I actually did consider maybe buying a place before I rented, but then I was just like, it just doesn't seem to make sense. Like if I buy a place, I want to buy a house that I'm like a long-term place that I want to actually live in, because a lot of people buy a condo and think, oh, I'm just going to like rent it out. And like, they just think, people always think about like flipping houses or renting out houses and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't think it's as easy as you think it is. First of
100%.
all, like you have to maintain, first of all, if you have a bad renting, like I just don't want to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like I would like, if you have a bad tenant, like it could be disastrous.
Yeah,
exactly. And I've heard horror stories. So I'm like, I have no, and plus, like you said, for example, like if the economy is not good and, you have a condo that you bought that you intended on renting out, and you have no renters, then
it's vacant.
Yeah. So then what do you do? So you have to be smart. You can't just be like, oh, I think, if I buy a place, again, that's another thing, that if you buy a place, people automatically are like, oh my God, like you've succeeded in life. Like people like congratulate you. They're like, and don't get me wrong. Again, like it is still a big step, but also
it's an accomplishment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but like, is it really? Because it's not like you actually bought the fucking place. Okay. You still owe the bank a shit ton of fucking money. So let's be real. Like, yeah, you're not renting from a landlord, but you're renting from the bank. Like until you've paid off the fucking mortgage, I'm sorry, but like you still owe someone something. So don't pretend that like, it's not the same thing as, it's not like you just went with, $500,000 in cash and purchased a place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like people have this delusion that like, oh, because I got a mortgage, I bought the place, it's mine completely. And, I've somehow succeeded in life, whereas it's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. And really technically it's not theirs. I mean, it is but they still owe the bank, because as soon as,
if you don't pay it, what's going to happen? Yeah. Exactly.
The bank will repossess the house, and they will sell it.
The goddamn evil ass banks.
I know. The bank will repo that shit.
Yeah. That's the thing.
And
So you're deluding yourself into thinking that you've just, that's the thing, because people, they celebrate the fact that like, oh yeah, like you bought a house. But again, you didn't buy this house with your, like all of your own money. So, you're kind of deluding yourself into thinking that you've like reached a certain pinnacle of success or whatever. Yeah. Whereas like, I don't necessarily think that that's what it is. So to me, like renting, isn't, some kind of, it's fine. It just depends on your situation.
No, exactly. And I do think that there needs to be a stigma lifted off of renting. And I think in the Western world, especially in Canada, the US, the UK, there is this huge stigma about renting. Like it's huge. It's like,
really? You think so?
100%. Because if people are like, oh, you don't own your place. Oh, you're renting. Oh, okay. But you're saving to buy something, right? Or you're like, you know what I mean? There is that kind of like, it is looked at as more, and I don't know.
Less successful.
Like, exactly, than actually owning your place. But it's interesting because if you look at places like Europe, like Italy, Spain, a lot of these other places, renting is not frowned upon at all. Like lots of people rent here.
It's very normal.
Exactly. It's like normalized. Whereas I think also because like, especially in somewhere like Canada, we have so much space. So there are a lot of, things available to buy and all this kind of stuff. Whereas I think Europe is a bit, well, it is more densely populated and kind of like a bit harder, but I don't know what I was trying to say there.
No, it's really interesting. And one of the things that I lost my train of thought too.
God damn. And we're not even drinking yet.
Oh god damn, seriously. Oh god, we're gonna do a drunken episode later this afternoon, but what was I going to say? Oh, so with renting, for example, you have to be smart about it. Again, I'm not saying necessarily that renting is going to be the best choice or buying is going to be the best choice. It just all depends on your situation.
100%.
Because I think a lot of people jump into buying a place, especially if once they just became 25 or something. They're like, oh, okay, so now I need to buy a place because I need to be, at a certain level of success. And maybe they're in a relationship at that time and think they're going to spend the rest of their lives with this person. But actually, unfortunately not. And let's say they bought a place with this other person and then you end up losing money, end up having to break up and then it's just anyway. And also depending on the situation, because I've watched like videos about this like on YouTube from like people that kind of are into finance and stuff. So they talk about like renting versus like buying, and actually some of them prefer to rent because of so many one of the reasons could be, like we said, because buying a place is a long-term investment and a long-term kind of, not just with your money, but a long-term kind of commitment. Whereas when you're in your 20s, maybe like 25, or even like in your 30s, maybe you don't want to and maybe you haven't decided where you want to live. Maybe you haven't fully decided, okay, this is how I want to live my life. So, and it's just less commitment. And plus, if something goes wrong in your place, if you're renting, you can just be like, hi, landlord. Like,
no, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, this broke.
Exactly. Can you please fix this?
Yes.
And I also think, and like, I don't know, because of how, I mean, Calgary, even in Calgary, houses are expensive. And I think to myself, like, depending on, again, what you want, what do you want from life, right? But like, when I moved to Calgary, I kind of want to live downtown when I get there. I kind of want, a fairly nice apartment. Now, if I was to buy a condo, I could definitely rent something for a lot cheaper, like per month, than if I was to get the same level of like standard of living or the same kind of apartment if I was to buy it, probably.
Yeah. So it would be cheaper. That's why because I live in a condo, I decided to rent instead of buy because I don't see a condo as my long-term living solution. Yeah. And I don't know how condos are very like, I don't know. It's not very stable. I feel like you just don't know what's going to happen. So then I don't want to buy because you have to put down a mortgage. And then again, with that money, if you're into the investment thing, I'm sure with that money that you're going to put down for a mortgage, instead you could rent so that you don't have to put down money for a mortgage. And then you could invest that money into something else and you could potentially make more money. But again, I'm not really into like the whole investment thing, so I can't really comment, but that's what someone else said.
Exactly. Just depending on what your investments are. I mean, I used to work at an investment firm in London and like, a lot of their investment strategies. And again, don't quote me on this. This is just kind of like, but some of them would.
I was going to ask you for investment advice.
Oh, God
damn, Daniel. Okay, tell me.
I just don't want people to like listen to this and then think that
guys, we don't know shit. Don't listen to anything we're saying. Okay.
No, but I just know some of the strategies, like longer term strategies that the firm was having, was getting anywhere from 5 to kind of like maybe 10% returns. Over a long period of time, obviously. Right. Whereas it's like maybe with your house, you wouldn't get that. You know what I mean? So it just depends on so many different, it depends on so many different factors. And I think what I'm trying to get away from getting away from is necessarily, I think, great. If you get a house, great. If you're renting, great. But we shouldn't look at getting a house as the be all end all success of, you know, life.
It's like the keeping up with the Joneses mentality.
Exactly.
The very like traditional, like must buy a house in the suburbs, you know.
Must have that white picket fence, 2.5 kids.
Must have like the 2.5 kids.
Yeah.
The nice family van. Oh God. Can you think of anything worse? Just kidding.
No, and I mean,
no, don't get me wrong. Yes.
If that's your dream, I think, you know,
totally.
Great. But I just think that we as a society, I think we're starting to shift from that anyway, but there is still those pressures of, you know, again, getting that kind of like illustrious job or climbing the corporate ladder really, really quickly, and being married, having kids is another marker of success.
Having
owning
kids.
your place.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
there's definitely, let's talk about having kids. That's another thing that's,
oh God damn.
Oh God damn. That's another thing that I think a lot of people feel pressured to, they think that that's like what you're supposed to do. And if you, especially if you're a woman, I think if you say that you don't want to have kids, then people kind of look at you weird.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong. Like I want a family. I want kids. But like there's a lot of people that don't, and that's fine with me. Goddamn, we have way too many people in this goddamn world anyways.
We have a lot of people in this world.
Yep. Yeah. And what do you want, Daniel? Do you want children? Do you want two little Daniels running around?
Damn, this be some pressure and questions from Rose. No, like, it's funny because, again, I go all over the place with this one. Yeah, because I used to, again, when I was growing up, I used to be like, I'm very adamant. I want to be a parent. I want 2 kids. I wanted the things that we just talked about, everything, you know, like the illustrious career, fence. The white picket fence, the house, the gorgeous husband, and 2 lovely kids. But I mean, I think in the back of my mind, I still kind of want kids. Yeah. But it's more, I think my reasoning for wanting kids still is more of a selfish one, more so than like keeping up with the Joneses or having that pressure from society. It's more like I think about maybe
you want a family.
Exactly. I want that kind of family. And the reason being is like, well, especially like when I get older.
You don't want to die alone.
Exactly. I want to have like kids and maybe grandkids to come visit me at the old folks' home and not be by myself, you know?
I think that everyone kind of thinks that when they start a family, it's always a level of selfishness. Like, not all selfish, of course, because there's a lot of selflessness that is needed when you take care of another, you know, living being. Yeah. But also, I think that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we all need some level of a kind of, you know, like it's in our nature to want some level of a family unit in a sense, like, you know, like belonging and some sort of a community in a sense. And the family unit is considered that, you know, the most intimate community that you could have. So I think that, like for me, the same thing, you know, I want a family because of that reason. Like, I don't want to be, you know, dying alone with 4 cats.
Oh God!
Oh God damn! That might happen. Who knows? God damn!
I know. I mean, it's true. And if that does happen, you know, we'll cross those bridges when we get there, right? and you know,
I think this is the problem, though. Can I just digress for a second?
Yeah, you go. You digress.
Oh God damn!
Rose is going to get into it now.
Oh God damn! The problem again is that we now live in this world that we're kind of fucked. Can I just say we are kind of fucked? Okay. Do you know why? Because we live in this world where we no longer have much of a community in terms of like outside of our home. Like, you know, I feel like back in the day, maybe like people were a lot more, they communicated with their neighbors, they chilled with their neighbors, you know, they shared food and they did all of these like things to feel like they're part of a community. Yeah. And, you know, when my parents were young, they always tell me, like they didn't have a lot of money because Korea was pretty poor, but like they were all like, they lived in like the same like village and like they lived in this like village with like, you know, different, and they all knew their neighbors, all the kids would play outside. And then like they would have these like kimchi making days. Sounds so Korean. Yeah. They would have like a day when like you're supposed to like make kimchi. There's like a day in Korea. I don't know. Yeah. So like everyone in the neighborhood makes kimchi and then you will like share your kimchi with like, so like the kids like run around, hold on.
Playing.
The kids like run around the neighborhood just like eating kimchi from different neighbors and they all like share everything. And there's that kind of community mentality and that does not really exist anymore in Korea, for example. that kind of, dynamic no longer exists. So now a lot of people are lonely. A lot of people, and plus, so that doesn't exist. But then also, less people are getting married, and less people have families. Less people start a family. Less people have kids. Less people get married. So then you end up with a bunch of single people that, otherwise, if we still had a community, we still lived in the village making kimchi together, then like you would feel still part of something. But then you're single, lonely, and you also don't have a community. And so you're basically fucked.
Oh God. Well, you know what, Rose? Can we actually, I really like the sound of this. I think me and you should create a kimchi day in Calgary.
We should make kimchi.
Yes. Can we please do it and just make a giant batch of kimchi with a bunch of people? I think that would be super fun.
No, but seriously, it's I watched the movie. I think it's called like Happy or something like that. And it's like a documentary about happiness. It's really interesting. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore, but it was on Netflix. Okay. And one of the kind of stories, because they tell different stories around the world. And one of the stories was this, I think it was in Denmark, one of the Scandinavian countries. And they had built like a communal kind of like community, basically, where people still lived in their own like houses, but then they would gather every night for dinner. And then like one household would be responsible for making dinner or something like that. Like a few households would be responsible for making dinner for everybody in that community. So then they would all sit around and eat together. And like that kind of, and you don't have to be, how like sometimes like old, there's like a neighborhood for like old folks, like like doesn't your grandma live in like one of those like communities or something like that? Yeah, but instead of just community. Yeah, but instead of just old folks, it's like everyone. Like it could be a a normal family of 4 and like a single woman, and I felt like that was like really that's kind of like a nice, that's a nice thing.
I think that's really nice too. And I do think in general, like I have to say, just from living in Europe, more so in Spain and probably Italy and maybe France and a few of those other countries, but like here, especially in the cities, I do feel like there's more of a sense of community because a lot of people live in these kind of like basically all of my, like I don't live in a big city, but the whole downtown of the city is like these kind of apartment blocks, which are like maybe 4 stories, 5 stories high. And everybody lives in these apartments. And so they all come out to these like communal like plazas and things like that. And you see a lot of like the people like playing and enjoying. And like, for example, on Christmas Day, the entire city was out. Like everyone was out, outside having like lovely family dinners. And like, I do feel like whereas in Western system, not that this is still Western
in North
society,
America,
but in North America, like in Calgary is especially like
there is no community.
Exactly. Everyone lives in a suburb in these like really big houses, like far from each other.
They're all separated. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's yes, okay, we have community centers and stuff, but like there's not really that sense of like people just being in the plaza in the evening, having drinks or chatting with each other. Yeah. It's like there's so much less of that, which I think is kind of a shame because I'd really enjoy that. Like, even though I'm in a smaller city than Calgary, like the city I'm in right now is smaller than Calgary. However, that being said, any time of the day I walk around the city, there's people about, there's people around, there's like a life, there's people in plazas, people walking around the streets. Whereas in Calgary, it's like you can go at certain times and the city's dead.
Yeah.
So
I know. That's what I really like. I loved that about Europe. I think that's why I loved Europe so much because like everything is kind of like close together. So then, you feel just like it's more alive. Like the places are just more alive. Whereas like here, there's in fucking Canada, like everything is just spread apart.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons.
Which I mean,
to that,
during this coronavirus, it's a pro at this point. We'd be practicing. Yeah, we'd be practicing social distancing our entire
since we were born. Yeah, we've been doing that social distancing.
Oh God. Damn.
Yeah, but it's an interesting one. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is a shame. I do think in some ways the Westerns, like Canada and US and stuff, we've kind of lost some of that community. Yeah. And I think it's starting to go that way probably in Europe as well. But I do feel like just from living in Spain, they still have a lot of that in regards because they do have those plazas in central areas. And people here are very, very social, like neighbors know each other and even in the apartment complex. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's quite good. That part's good.
Yeah, that part's good.
Yeah,
but right now we all be social distancing.
Exactly. Right now we'd be locking ourselves away.
Oh, God damn. Yeah. What other pressures, Daniel? Can you think of anything else?
I think those are the main ones that I feel. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think those are the main ones that I think is like a job.
Yeah. Love
kids,
life.
Family. Yeah, that's kind of like the main, I think those are the main ones that I feel. What about you? Like, is there anything that you could think of that's like potentially,
yeah, I can't really think of anything more. I think that's like, those are the main ones.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments if you can think of more, or if you feel pressured by society
what are
to be a certain way or to do a certain thing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely leave some comments. Yeah, if you feel like we've missed something out on this particular episode.
Oh, God damn. Oh, how about the pressure of women to, well, not just women, but mainly women to not get old? Like, the pressures.
I was gonna say, okay, no, I see where you're coming at this from. Oh, well, actually, no, this is an interesting one. So you're saying about women getting old, and you know what I think that stems from? It stems from, and I could be completely off base here, but I think the part of the reason why that happens is because women can only bear children
Reproduce.
up to a certain age.
Right. Oh,
so
100%. Yeah.
There's that added pressure of, okay, you're a woman, you have to have a child by a certain age, otherwise you're no longer reproductive.
You're no longer wanted, essentially.
But it's interesting because men can, I guess essentially have children at any age. That doesn't happen so much for men.
I do think that is probably, that's probably where it kind of came from initially, that kind of, because obviously, like women, especially back in the day, were kind of seen as like reproductive machines, essentially. And like, we're supposed to have kids. So until, and like by the time we're, even 30, we're like less fertile, I guess that's the word. Fertile. And is it fertile or fertile? I think you can use both.
You can definitely use both, yeah.
Fertile.
I just think fertile sounds a bit weird, like turtle.
Is a fertile. How do you say it, guys? I'm not sure.
Well, anyways, I make up pronunciation of words all the time, so I could be wrong.
That's true. So, anyways, fertile. Anyway, you guys know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, that is definitely where it comes from. But then also, it's like, but then because of that kind of already existing, I guess, stigma, it kind of translates into more. So like, women, they still want to look young, like all the time. And, if we get older, we're seen as like not as attractive. And even if, you can still have kids, it's still, because of that, long-standing kind of stigma against women getting old. We all want to look young forever.
True. But I would argue though, I would not argue, but I would say that for men, that's also becoming a thing. Like
you always say this whenever I talk about this.
Less so for women. Less so for men, more so for women.
Like way less for men.
Yeah, way less for men. Obviously, because you often see like an older man with a younger woman, this kind of stuff. But I think that the age pressures for men might be different than they are for women, in a sense that like, once a man gets to a certain age, there's a lot of pressure for him to be financially successful.
Yes. So that's a bigger pressure for a man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're in your 40s or even in your 30s and you're not financially stable, you're looked at as like less of a man. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah.
And so I think that's the pressure that men have.
And that's a huge pressure.
But I think in general as society, people that are, youth is looked on like quite favorably. Do you know what I mean? Like,
not for men though. I really don't think. I think for men, there's they have a sense of status. So like a man gets older.
Yeah.
And of course not when you're like, I guess it's different when you're like, 80, 90, but like, around like middle age or whatever. And they're kind of seen as like, oh, like if a man is like older and successful, they're seen like, oh wow, like, the successful man. Whereas like a woman is, older, and even if she is successful, it's like, oh, she's old. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like this goes back to like gender stereotypes and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, again, you look at a successful man and a successful woman, and when they're interviewed and stuff like that, quite often they're asked very different questions. And for women, more often than not, they always ask about, having to give up this, the idea of being a traditional mother or whatever else. Like, do you feel like that was a really hard thing? But they typically never ask the men that.
Yeah,
so, again,
that's true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no,
but yeah, for men, yeah, for sure, that pressure of being, it's just different pressures. Like a man gets older and they feel like, oh, if I don't achieve a certain level of financial success, then I'm like a failure, essentially.
Exactly. So I think that, I think that age, that's another good pressure to bring up though, is that the whole thing about age. So for women, again, it's that whole idea of like being youthful, staying young, being fertile. Fertile. Fertile.
Is fertile.
Yeah, fertile.
I'll be fertile.
And then for men, it's like, again, that achieving that level of success. And I would argue that age also brings into play not just those. So those are two elements, but also, again, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but like when you hit certain ages, it's kind of expected that you also reach certain milestones. So you said about, when you hit 25, maybe you should have a house by now. When you hit 30, you should be married by now. When you do this, you should be, and that is
I don't got none of those things.
Successful. Exactly.
I ain't successful. God damn.
Oh, God damn, Rose. No,
but it's funny because I remember when I think we were like in university or something, and one of my friends like had this like milestone list. She was like, oh, by like 25, I want to be married. And by 27, I want my first child. And by 29, and I was like, dude, you can't just like map out your life like this. Like,
exactly.
I just remember being like, this, like, I mean, I guess it's good to have goals, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of like strange to put like an age to a certain like milestone.
100%.
And, I don't think she's reached any of those. So.
Rose, that's so savage.
No, but it's not savage because she's doing fine. You know what I mean?
No,
like
we're
all happy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
No,
so it's like those things are kind of our delusional ideas of what is deemed successful and happiness.
Well, exactly. And I also think like, okay, it's good to, make mental mind maps and have ideas of what you want. But again, putting ages to it, especially for certain things which I feel like are vastly out of our control. Yeah. So like, for example, getting married and having kids, for the most part, like I just feel like, at least from my perspective, like I'm not going to know if and when I'm going to get married. I can't like put a timeline on that because, if it's the right person, who knows how long that's going to take. You know what I mean? So it's hard to say, oh, I'm going to have this by this age. I'm going to have this by this age. And the same for kids. Like, what if you're not ready to have kids at 27 and you want a few more years? What's wrong with that? Nothing. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's crazy. It's craziness.
Yeah. Oh, God damn. Have we been talking for an hour or so?
Oh, God damn. It's been long as hell.
Oh, God damn. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our little list of societal pressures, and I hope that we lifted some of those pressures off for you. Yeah. Or we made them worse. Who knows?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I think, as society's ideas of what's successful is shifting. I mean, obviously still we have those pressures, which we discussed, but I think more and more it's like, I mean, fundamentally the way that my little nugget at the end here, my golden philosophy is like, I just think ultimately you have to look within yourself, and like, this sounds like really cheesy, but like, are you happy ultimately, right? So that's the most important thing. Like whether if buying a house will make you happy legitimately, then do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need
but that's the thing, I don't think people realize that certain things won't make them happy until they do it. And then they realize, okay, because you can't really get these real happiness. And again, this sounds cheesy too, but real happiness doesn't come from like all of these external things and material things. Certain level of it, yes. But like, if you think that you're going to hit these milestones and then you're just going to automatically become happy, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
We could do a full episode on happiness.
Yeah, I think we should. I'm gonna add that to the extensive list. And I have to say right now, Rose, I don't know if you can see in your little window, but goddamn, there be an angelic light raising down on your face.
Oh, goddamn, you love the angelic light.
Looks, seriously.
I should open and the blinds are closed right now. Imagine if I open the blinds.
Oh, that would be too
like
much.
An angel on the left side of my face.
Anyways, okay. So I think that concludes this episode on, kind of societal pressures, the pressures of getting older. As always, if you're listening on a platform in which you can comment, please do
leave us a comment. Yes.
Let us know what you think. Let us know, maybe other topics you guys want us to discuss. And obviously check us out on Instagram, YouTube, subscribe, hit that subscribe and like button.
Yes. And download that audiobook. Download that audiobook, audibletrial.com/The SaVeg Podcast.
Yeah, there'll be links below in the
show notes.
In the show notes, yeah.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
we be professional podcasters.
Just about, kind of semi-professional, but we
anyways, keep us in mind for your commute if you are still commuting, or when you go for your long walks, or when you're about to fall asleep, or if you're just doing the dishes. I don't give a shit. Just listen to us.
That was beautiful, Rose.
I know. I'm so inspirational.
Well, you are. You be inspirational as hell. Okay,
oh, God damn.
Yeah, I think that's it from us today. And check out other episodes that we have. So we have a lot of episodes now out. I think this is going to be episode number 16 or 17 or 18. I don't even know now. So go and check all of those out. And yeah, let us know what you think.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye. See you later.